So, what does it mean when somebody tells you your Chinese is good? This is actually quite an interesting question for language learners, and it has a lot to do with culture and language and a bunch of fun stuff. So, if you're speaking Chinese and they say, "Wow, 你中文讲得很好," what does that really mean? Because a lot of people think it means, "Wow, your Chinese is really good." Actually, it probably means your Chinese isn't good. or it means something like, "Wow, your Chinese is really good for a foreigner." So why do I say that? I spent 13 years in Taiwan, and I've had a gazillion conversations in Chinese with Taiwanese people. And I've seen how they react to people, and from all different levels. I know quite a few people that speak Chinese so well. Like one guy speaks Chinese so well that the people thought he was Chinese, but he looks nothing. I mean, he's about as white as they come. He doesn't look Chinese at all. And they thought he was Chinese because his Chinese was so good. So, I mean, right there, you can take that as a real compliment. If somebody thinks you're Chinese when you're not, then you're probably doing pretty good. But so if you're hearing 你中文讲得很好 all the time, it probably means you're still somewhat at a beginning level. But here's the thing. Here's a very important concept. Praise, if you believe it too much, can actually be very detrimental to the learning process. And why is that? And because if you think you're already there, you're not going to strive to get further, or most likely you won't. Like I was talking to a guy one time. He was a foreigner living in Taiwan, married to a Taiwanese woman. And, you know, I was talking about tones and how important tones are. And he's, tones aren't important at all. I get biaojuans all the time. And when he spoke, it was not biaojuan. But actually, too, that's another one. If they say, 哇, 你中文讲得很标准, it means basically the same thing. Basically, you know, keep trying. Or 加油, as a Taiwanese person would say. Now, if you go up and you talk to somebody and they just treat you like another person, they don't acknowledge the fact that you're a foreigner, they don't acknowledge that your Chinese is good or bad, they just talk to you, that's actually a really big compliment. So if you're getting that kind of reaction, then you know you're doing pretty good. And this is actually a thing that they've studied where the better you get at a language, the amount of praise you get actually significantly drops off. And then sometimes this can be kind of jarring for people. And you might even be criticized. Like somebody might actually criticize you severely for making a mistake because they're giving you more language credit. So what does a real compliment look like? Well, beyond what I just said, say, you know, like I went to the bank one time and I was trying to get something done with my ATM card, and I walked in and I was asking questions about this bank card, and the guy just stopped and he looked at me and goes, 你在这边长大的吗? Like he's asking me, you know, did you grow up here? I mean, that's a real compliment. Like he's not saying 很标准, 讲得很好. He's like asking, did you grow up here? Also, but I also have seen, I noticed, like I said, quite a few people that speak Chinese like on a just super superb, excellent level, that they just sound Taiwanese. And that's something that else they'll say if you're doing a really good job. They'll say, 哇, 他中文讲得跟台湾人一样. So if they're saying that, then you're doing pretty good. Now, the flip side of this coin is criticism. You actually don't want to believe criticism too much. You don't want to completely ignore it. I mean, no, nobody actually likes to get criticism, but just kind of hold on, and once that wave of irritation and anger passes you, stop and rationally think about what the person said. Now, if it's somebody just trying to give you a hard time, obviously, you know, you can just blow that off. But if it's a native speaker and they might actually be giving you a really good pointer as to where some of your problems might be. Let me give you an example. So a good friend of mine, I won't say his name to make sure the innocent don't suffer, but he asked me to make a phone call. He had to call some place where they didn't have an English speaker. So I called and I talked to the person, got the information he needed, and then he goes, "Oh yeah, you know, I never heard that you had an American accent before, but now I hear it." And of course I didn't like this You know, it was very, well, it's just annoying, really. But I thought about this like days later. Like at the time he said it, I kind of told him, you know, I really don't believe you. I believe that I probably have a foreign accent, but I don't believe that you can hear them American. And then I don't know how much later it was, but like Mike Sway has this video on YouTube where he does all these different accents, like Chinese speakers speaking English, Russians speaking English, French people speaking Chinese, and all this stuff. And he has this American dude speaking, you know, your typical American accented Chinese.
没事儿，哥们儿，我们挺好的。
And I'm watching this video, and the guy says, 我们是美国. And when he said that, there was something, I mean, obviously that doesn't sound Chinese. Chinese would sound like 我们在美国. But the way he said it, I thought, wait a minute, how do I say that in English? In America? And I was like, oh my God, he's actually just using American intonation. And that is actually what my friend heard, which is why he said he thought I had an American accent. Now, this is before I cleared my tonal problems up. I mean, I still have struggle, you know, from time to time, but mostly I've gotten it taken care of. But that comment that he made, which was annoying when he said it, but later turned out to be gold for me. And it turned out to help me like, if he hadn't said that, I would have watched that Mike Sway video and not have learned anything from it. But because he said that, and because I was thinking, what could he actually be, what could he be thinking of? Like, it's not my word pronunciation. I mean, it could be tones, but that's what it was. It was intonation. Like, so my American intonation was overtaking my Chinese tones, which is what made it sound American. So criticism, praise can be dangerous, and criticism can actually be very valuable. It all depends on how you react to it. Like, and it's not easy. So if you hear criticism and you get annoyed by it, don't veer away from it. Don't shun criticism because it annoys you. Just ride out the annoyance. Like, pretend it's a wave coming at you and just go up with the wave and then come down. And then later, when you're not annoyed, then think about it. Like, I remember I had one of my Chinese teachers, she's like a stickler for basically all mistakes. And she will tell you about every single mistake that you make while you're saying it. And I was going to give a paper in Chinese for a conference in Korea back in like 2011 or something. And she would meet me at Starbucks for like an hour every week. And I would go over my presentation and she would correct my errors. But every single time I sat down to talk to her, I would be super irritated for like the first 5 minutes that she would correct me. It was like every time she corrected me, she's like jabbing a pin in my arm or something. But what I would do is I knew it was going to happen, and I just prepared myself, and I got there. She would start into me. I would be annoyed and I would tense up. But then after about 5 minutes, it would just go away, and I could take in rationally her corrections. And as a result, my presentation was much better. So the takeaway from all this is, don't believe praise too much and don't believe criticism too much. Use both of them to improve your language abilities.